Good afternoon and thank you for joining us today. We're pleased to have all of you with us. I'm Anton Sayalan, the Chief Evangelist for Luminary Learning Solutions, and I'll be the voice of the webinar this afternoon. Welcome to Season 2 of Reset and Go, aptly named Revive and Grow, which is a part of our unique Saturdays are for Learning with Luminary, delivering 38 segments of pure learning during this series, preparing us to get further ahead. In today's segment of Revive and Grow, we're discussing prioritizing work and managing your day, a conversational exchange of experiences for you to grasp best practices, alter perceptions, and implement. Joining us today are our subject matter experts. Davina Kern, Head of Group HR, David Pieris Group, an HR professional with over 20 years of experience backing her in a number of industries. Good afternoon, Davina.
Good afternoon. Hi.
And joining her is our second guest this afternoon is Sasanka Bandara, founder of CHATUSKOTI. Sasanka is an accomplished global business professional, highly valued for his rare ability to connect scientific research to business problems. A chemist turned apparel, textile, fashion, and retail industry executive. Good afternoon, Sasanka.
Afternoon, Anton, and afternoon all.
Hosting our conversation today is none other than Zafrana Nafiz, a trainer with Luminary Learning Solutions. And now it's my pleasure to hand over the session to Zafrana and our guest for an hour of reverting conversations. Over to you, Zafi.
Thank you, Anton. Good evening, everyone. Prioritizing and managing your day is a subject that has no specific formula that fits all. It's always about identifying and adapting the best approach that suits you. With that, I thought it's best that we start the conversation and understanding how do we identify our priorities in the first place. And that's something people often get confused with. So, Sasanka, would you like to go first? How do you identify your priorities?
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Zafrana. So I thought before we actually talk about how we identify priorities and how we manage our day, that I'd maybe talk through from my own experience a couple of important features about time itself, right? And the first, I think, is that time is really valuable, right? Especially what we call the present time is extremely valuable in the sense that you can use that present time to create wealth, right? I'm not talking about just monetary wealth, but it might be knowledge, it might be happiness, but you can use the time we currently have to create wealth. The second is that it's a scarce resource, right? So it's scarce in the sense that if you don't use your time properly, you can't get it back. It's also scarce in the sense that if you reduce the amount of time that you put on a particular project or a particular initiative, then your output is reduced, your performance is reduced, right? So it's a scarce resource. And thirdly, I think it's important to note that, although today's focus is about work and managing a day, you have to almost think about time in at least three different buckets, right? And for me, that is how much time do you spend on yourself and your own development? What about your family and friends, so your relationships, and then work and career. So you have to kind of prioritize your time across all those three different segments and those three different buckets. The fourth, I would say, is that managing a day and managing your time in a day is a little bit different. Time management itself, right? When you say time management, we are talking about a fixed set of tasks, and you're talking about doing that in the most efficient way. So, right, managing a day is a little bit more complex than that. And finally, I would say, what is time to us? Psychological time has to do with memory, and it has to do with performance and some aspiration for us. So it's important to think about purpose when you're allocating and prioritizing, right? So I'd say, you have to think across different dimensions, and you have to think across what purpose is driving your behavior.
Yes, that's an interesting way to start the conversation, Sasanka. to align the purpose around, when trying to identify priorities. Davina, what do you think? How do you really identify your priorities? Well, in terms of work and maybe even in personal life.
Okay, so I'd probably pick up from where I think Sasanka stopped from in terms of looking at the bigger purpose. So I would say in terms of prioritizing, the word itself, it's more, what is the importance that I give, right? Prioritizing is the importance of what I want to do it in order. So I would say then us getting into the smaller bits, it's to look at the bigger purpose of life. In looking at from a career perspective or your profession, then it comes to your family, and then it comes into your own self. So looking at preparing yourself in a broader level, the longer term, that will help you to drive where you want to go in terms of prioritizing. So that is your bigger purpose of prioritizing yourself. And again, picking up from what Sasanka said, time is wealth, happiness. You need to pick and choose what keeps you happy in life. So that is actually your priority. So that is your bigger plan in terms of what you want to achieve in life. And then you kind of, take one step at a time. So in life, we would want to know, okay, if I'm to get into my career, what do I want to achieve? If I want to my family life, what do I want my family to achieve along with me? And then keeping time for myself, what is it that I want to achieve? It can be personal time for myself, it can be for professional development. So how do I plan myself in that longer run? And then probably you will break down into a yearly plan, right? Something that I want to probably bring from my experiences, something that I do in terms of identifying what do I want to do for this year. So I would probably put a bit of a plan in terms of what is important to me, in terms of my work, in terms of my family, in terms of myself, in terms of what do I want to achieve? So then probably would stem down into getting into the nitty-gritties in terms of, if I'm to being a working mother, what is it that I'm going to do in terms of my career, from my team, from my organization? What is that yearly plan? Then I break it down into probably quarters or months. So in the same manner, in the three aspects of life, profession, family, and your personal life, you break it down. So it becomes much easier. Then it becomes a monthly plan, it becomes a weekly and a daily. So sometimes the problems crops up when we don't prioritize and trying to pick up the day. So then we lose the bigger purpose of what I'm trying to achieve. And then probably we get stuck and we'll get lost in the whole thing. So my thing is, when we are talking about prioritizing and managing the day, it starts with a bigger purpose and then you work towards it. Of course, things may not go, well, the way you plan, we're all human beings, things can go wrong, but, you need to look at how do I check and adjust to meet my bigger plan and adjust my monthly or weekly or, then you adjust your day-to-day plan. So I would say prioritizing is picking what is important to the company, to your family, to yourself, and doing what keeps you happy. Then you will achieve that bigger purpose that you want. Yeah, so that's my kind of broader aspect into. Yeah.
Interesting, Sasanka pointing out the purpose and then you linking it with happiness. We have an interesting question too coming up. Someone asked, shouldn't we identify priorities based on our JD? What do you guys think about it?
Do you want to pick it up or shall I pick it up, Sasanka?
Okay.
Yeah. So in terms of this, you're talking about purely your job role. So number one is I touched upon a very broad aspect in terms of how you prioritize. In life, when you prioritize, those are the three segments when I touched on what Sasanka started off with. So those are the three areas. So coming back to work, because you're specifically asking about your JD. So yes, well enough. So if sometimes what happens is your priorities all depends on what you want to do. So in your particular job role that you're doing, there are certain things that probably you would have decided you wanted to do, but on a day-to-day basis in your job, yes, you need to prioritize in what your JD says. But if you're someone who is very career focused, don't limit yourself into the JD. You need to go beyond your JD. JD is helped, or it's a framework to help you to do what you're supposed to do on a day-to-day basis, right? A JD cannot put everything that a role would require to do. It will give a parameter. But if you're someone wanting to go beyond, don't limit yourself into the task that is in your JD, but in your day-to-day work, depending on which level you are. If you're on at an executive level, yes, you need to prioritize your work based on your JD. I would say to go beyond that, you need to understand and identify what is priority. If you're at an executive level, what is priority to your manager? What is priority in your department to do? What is priority in your organization? So probably, asking those questions will help you to plan your day more effectively, because your JD will say, okay, do these tasks, do this documentation, do this for the day. But probably that may not be enough to get things done during the day what you want to do, because your boss's priority might be something else and you would probably end up doing something else. So it's very, very important at work. Even if you're at a lower level, always, there is no harm in going and checking with your boss, what is the priority today for our department, or what is the weekly plan for our department, where these are the things I have to do, what do I need to focus on? So that will help you to achieve what you want. That will help your boss to achieve what you want, if you're an executive, because you asked something, a very specific question from the JD. Yeah.
So let's say they've aligned, they understand the purpose, and now probably they have a year plan too, and they really know what they want to get at. How do you plan your day? Maybe let's talk about our personal experiences. Do you plan your personal work also, or do you have a routine? From both of you, how do you all plan your day? Sasanka, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can talk about how I do it, but again, like we discussed with time management, you have to find your own formula and what exactly works for you. So, I think the first thing to figure out when planning your day is, if you look at your day, what parts are you, let's say, for example, I'm very strong in the morning, right? I'm a morning person, but not everybody is like that, right? Some people might be more late night people. So I prefer, as soon as I wake up, to spend an hour or so alone with myself, right? Reflecting on, what I have to do and what I have to, and after that I'll start, basically if it's exercise, which is most of the day, just doing a walk or some cycling around the house, that's essentially my pre-work routine, right? But it doesn't have to be like that. I think what is important is, like Davina said, also to think through. I think I just want to add one more thing on the JD question. It's that if you prioritize and if you schedule your work according to only your JD, I think you're accepting then that, there's nothing beyond that you want to do, right?
Sure.
So I think it's really important to focus on more than just the JD, what you want to achieve. And when I'm prioritizing the day, I think, a lot of us talked about variability and how things can change throughout the day. So it's good to think through in your schedule for the day, when you look at your calendar, what are the routine kind of mechanistic things that you can do, right? Which is more a time management basis, right? So this is the task I have to do. Let's say you're filling in some particular form or something like that. It's a very mechanistic task. So to kind of treat those differently. And when you're blocking out time for other stuff, like, say it's a meeting with some of the executives, senior level executives that you have, there may be unplanned issues and problems. So you think through what is mechanistic and what is schedulable and what is routine and what might require a little flexibility in terms of your time and thinking and effort. That's how I would go about it.
Davina, you want to add something?
Yeah. So in terms of planning your day, what you asked was, from a more professional front or from office front to a home front. So I would probably share my personal experience, how I go about. So more from a work front, what I would usually do is I would plan myself for a week or two in terms of my meetings. And if I do have, more routine stuff, like if I do have interviews, I would block out the calendar. So then my 1 or 2 weeks is being planned. More from an office front on a daily basis, I would probably, list down, apart from using the calendar, I would list down the things that I have to do and probably prioritize. And I just want to pick up on something what Sasanka said. Identifying yourself in terms of what is your peak time. That becomes very, very important. So you leave the stuff which are very, very important to do and the things that needs your mind time in for your peak times, right? And I think so thereby planning your day will help you to get through. And something else that I do in terms of my work planning is scheduling my emails also. That means that becomes also a killer, because each time you keep your emails open, your to-do list, your priorities go berserk. So it's very, very important to schedule times, at least maybe 4 or 5 times a day to look into the emails. Otherwise, once you get an email, your entire priority list is gone berserk.
Yes.
So it's very, very important. And also when you plan your day in the morning, we'll say suddenly you need to put a meeting. You need to see whether everything is ready for the meeting, because otherwise you're not going to achieve what you want. You will schedule the meeting, you will have the meeting, but your resources are not available. So that becomes a waste. So it's actually, when you're planning yourself, it's better to see what you're going to get done. Is it better for me to plan it tomorrow, even if it's, so things like that. And also when you plan yourself, you need to, probably when you list down, we'll say 10, 15 things, but there are the must that you have to do today. So it's very, very important that you mark what you have to do today out of your 15, 20 list. These are the 10 things I have to do it today, because if I don't do it today, it becomes urgent and it becomes a problem, right? Again, then I'll struggle the following day to start prioritizing. So it's very, very important to, plan that. So that is from a more work front. So from a more personal front, because being a mother, being a female, a working female heading a department or in the group, it becomes extremely challenging. So what I do is on a daily basis. Again, my home front plan is also a weekly basis with kids things and all of that. So in the morning when I have my tea, I visualize what I want to do in terms of who does what even at home, and even at work. That is something that I kind of plan myself in terms of getting my day through, in terms of prioritizing. So that's how I go about in terms of my planning on a daily routine. Yeah.
Interesting. So in mostly when hearing of how you plan your day and how you really allocate your priorities, I think it's important that people have that self-discipline, right? So do you agree that it's mostly about self-discipline and commitment also that you need to make the best out of your day, or is there anything else that goes into it?
Okay, shall I pick it up? Yeah, so I think definitely there needs to be discipline. Otherwise, it's going to be, if you're focused, things get done. But having said that, you can probably derail. But if you have a mechanism of checking and adjusting, sometimes, you plan your day and things don't go well. So if you have a habit of checking and adjusting, still you will be able to get what you want to, what you had planned to get done. So that is something that you probably need to start getting used to, because you plan things sometimes don't go well. It's probably sometimes it's beyond your control, right? So
just
you need
like
to
how
have
it happened to you today.
It did, right? So I'll probably share with all of you. So because I was getting prepared to come into office today for this webinar, so I had a few things to do at home. So I told my husband today, probably you need to, do the grocery. So what happened was my neighbor fell off a drain, so he had to be taken into the army hospital. So he ended up going. So I ended up doing the groceries and, all of that. But I ensured that I kind of made it on time and all of that bit. So having said that, although you plan, certain things don't go the way it ought to go. And something else is to make our day, to make the most of our day. Sometimes we think it's, I have to do everything, right? So something that we need to be mindful of as human beings, we can't do everything by ourselves. We need help. It can be from a personal front, it can be at work, because you will not be the person to do everything. So you need your help, your supporting system. So it's very, very important, even when you plan your day, be at home, be at work, who is going to do what. So that delegation becomes utmost important. So once you have started delegating, things will fall in place. So as a manager, I'm sure there are certain managers in this group. So it's very, very important to pick who is going to support you in doing certain things. So planning, once you prioritize, you will help them also to plan. Because if they have not planned, you as will fail as a manager. So that planning, prioritizing, it's a bigger thing than what we think. Because most of the time, as human being, we plan only for that moment. So then prioritize for that moment, depending on that moment's plan. So then things probably don't go well the way we want. And then we end up, we get stressed out, that is because I have not thought what I exactly want. And something else is, even though we plan, now even at work, we plan to do, get certain things done, go meet our boss, get certain things done. But probably it doesn't go the way we want, right? So, but that doesn't mean that we get stressed out and park it, but we need to have the passion to do it. So hence I said, when you prioritize, it's important to do what keeps you happy. So you're more passionate. There's a lot of positivity. There's a lot of energy when you do what you love to do. So through that positivity, energy, you tend to do the things that you don't like to do, because you have that level of energy in you, and you tend to pick up the things that you don't like to do. As human beings, not that we like to do everything we have to do, right? Even at home, not the things like everything we don't like to do, no. Even at work, there are things probably, there are things we love to do. There are things that we don't like to do so much. So probably when you're planning, so focus on where your resources needs to be. Look at the things that you can probably make that impact, and pick the resources that you need to help you to make that impact. So while you do that, if you do first the things that you love to do, then it automatically becomes a stress-free environment you to do what you least like to do. Because in this whole juggle, we have to do so many things. Yeah.
True.
So
and that
those are ways
easy.
and means we can reduce our ways of getting stressed out.
True.
Yeah.
That way it's easy to manage your uncertainties also, right?
Yes.
I'd like to hear from Sasanka also, because I think we all can join examples. Now, for example, Davina had something unexpected happening, and she said how through delegating, or if you, as far as you like what you want to do, you have that energy to really, still get things done the way you want. Sasanka, how do you manage unexpected things? How much we plan our day, things can go crazy, right? What's your style? How do you approach when unexpected things happen and still try to get what you want done?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So I think, again, there is no easy answer to that. It's, when there's chaos around you, it's, you have to have a lot of discipline and practice to elicit the right kind of behavior, right? But I'd say try and do two things. So whenever you're faced with prioritizing something or pushing something forward or backwards, I think you can ask yourself two questions, right? One is you ask yourself what you have to do, and Davina talked about the importance of listing out the main tasks that you have to do for the day, right? That's really important, because if you don't tick those boxes, then the next day it's gotten even heavier and you're in a even bigger soup, right? The other thing, the question that I think you should ask yourself is why you want to do it. Right. And again, Davina touched on the fact that when you do something that you love, time takes on a very different course, right? It's a totally different format. And I would say, even if sometimes there are even things that you're good at, right? But you don't care about it so much, right? There are a lot of tasks that you might find, no, I'm good at this, but it doesn't mean a lot to me, right? So it's important to ask yourself then, what do I have to do and why do I need to do this, right? And when, something like if it's an absolute crisis where it's an emergency or something like that, of course, I don't think anyone is prudent enough to exercise a lot of thinking and foresight, because even in your body and your biology, a different mode kicks in, right? So instinctively you pick up and there are things that you do, and that's not a bad thing at all, right? There are certain responses that, certain situations that you need to elicit that response. But I'd say on a more planning level and on a day, ask yourselves the two questions of, what is it that I have to do? And why is it important that I do this? The reason why I say that is often, there's also a mismatch between what we think we do, right, and what we really do, right? So maybe we can get into that at a different part of the conversation. So I think it's important to ask yourself, what is it that I have to do and why do I have to do this?
True. And do you think people should make backup plans whenever they plan something? So suppose if there is any unexpected meeting or something goes wrong, that they have a fallback plan or to delegate it to somebody. Do you think always people have to do that, or you think that's again based on priority?
Yeah, I think it's very situational in the sense that, if you're talking about an overall business, obviously there has to be a contingency planning and backup. But very often for our life situations, it's very difficult to do a plan B for everything, right? You can barely manage your time on plan A. So it's increasingly difficult to kind of think through a backup. That decision, I think, you make based on risk and risk and reward. You look at, if this doesn't. So, for example, on this webinar, you have to think through, if your router doesn't work or if your power is out, how will we still continue, right? So then it's important to have a backup plan. But when you're running certain other operations, it's difficult to build contingency into every action, right? So depending on the situation, I think for most of the daily tasks, I think the more important thing is, rather than a backup, to be really focused on the present time that you have and to be really focused on what you're doing at that minute, right? Then a lot of these situations that need backups don't even arise. You see, a lot of the time we get into a mess because we're not focused on what we are doing at that particular time. So if you can try and do that and try and be aware moment to moment of what you're doing, I think that helps.
How do you make use of technology to prioritize? Do you use any technology? How do you go around with it? Yes. So how do you use any technology to plan your day and prioritize? Either Davina or Sasanka can answer the question.
Okay, so probably I'll pick up on it. So in terms of using technology, yes, more for my probably work-related areas, I use technology in terms of the normal software which is available, nothing sophisticated in terms of planning myself and the day. But having said which, what has worked for me has been successful. So although I have my, the teams to, the calendar notes to all of that been planned, I have not gotten written off my little notebook. So when I start my day during, when I come into office or the previous day evening before I leave, if there is anything that I think that I need to do the following day, I would put a to-do and I will list down. So writing and ticking things has really helped me to get where I am. So for me, the traditional way of writing has helped, but that doesn't mean that I don't use technology. Wherever I need to keep a tab, I use technology. And because you see, the moment you start writing, there is a rationale behind it also. I mean, when we were kids, why do we allow kids to touch, feel, and play? That is to develop your brain. So when you touch your pen and write, you're very conscious of what you write. So even if you have to, in the evening, to tick off, you will, out of your 10 or 15 items you have to do, you will tick off what you have done. And then you will write your little notes on what you need to do for the following day if you need to carry forward. So very conscious in terms of, using that method, and which has actually helped me versus putting your task list on an app. But definitely my calendars, those things are being planned on, the normal technology. So that is more from a office front. Even from a home front, I probably bought this little little notebook because yes, which I actually have it in my handbag all the time. Whenever I want to do something in the morning, this is how I plan my home stuff. So whatever I need to do, probably I write it down and I do a ticking and it has helped. So then I know even if it's pending to do in after 2 or 3 days, that is my checking and adjustment to say, okay, you were supposed to do this yesterday, you hadn't done. Because however much we plan, sometimes it doesn't go the way we ought it to be. So then there is a way actually you wouldn't miss it because you're not keeping it in your head, because the moment you just keep it in your head, sometimes the chances of it getting missed is high. So I have chosen something which is traditional, which has helped me, but I'm sure each one of us have our own way and means of, choosing and picking what helps us to, do things better. Yeah, so probably Sasanka, you can share.
Yeah. Yeah, Davina. So I like your approach. I think, like you actually said, old-fashioned is not bad at all. And when you certainly write
you said
things
not
down,
to say old-fashioned for her.
she's not wrong word, politically incorrect. But traditional. If you use the word traditional, it's certainly there are certain benefits to writing things, and one of the downsides of technology is that sometimes you take it all for granted, right? Because you have a calendar that automatically schedules all the meetings, so you don't tend to look at it. Whereas if you use a very traditional approach, then you have to write down everything, and that action itself makes you think a little bit about what the meeting is about and what your objectives are for the meeting. But with technology also, I don't think there's anything bad if you use it properly. And there are a couple of tools out there. I don't want to mention names, but I find it very useful because now you can integrate a lot of things, right? For example, you can mark out a location where you are and mark out and easily get onto your calendar how much time you're spending in that location, right? So there are certain things in instances where subconsciously you can spend more time on a task, right? I know certain developers, for example, there are tools where when you open up your laptop and start work, it automatically logs the number of hours spent on that. So I think depending on what your cup of tea is and depending on what you need to do, technology can certainly be an enabler when you're talking about measuring time use. The important thing, though, like Davina said, is to measure it and to reflect on it. I think that's the key takeaway.
Yeah, that's so true. It's all about what suits them, whether it's app or it's traditional as far as they use it, is it?
Yes.
Just writing down and not looking at it again also won't help.
Correct.
So what are the challenges you face when you try to plan your days based on priorities, and how do you really overcome them?
Shall I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, I mean, although we say, it's, we need to do that, we need to do this in terms of planning, things probably don't go the way it ought to be. So some of the things that I do in terms of, how when I plan my day, although I have like my to-do list as the department head, I would still sometimes when I know there are board meetings which has taken place or, I have to be prepared or, things like that, I would always touch base with my group chairman in terms of, to understand what would be priority to him in terms of, for this week from HR end. That probably helps me to plan my areas further. So hence the reason I said to the person who asked that question in terms of, don't only plan for your JD. You need to go probably beyond in planning yourself. And one other thing is, Zafrana, although we say we prioritize, we plan, do we plan for the task or do we plan how to get it done? For an example, we'll say I plan a meeting with my HODs this week, right? What is my end objective? What do I want to get done? What do I want to achieve? So you need to plan with that in mind, right? So then you get the real sense or the real output that you want. Otherwise, it becomes, yes, I have scheduled a meeting, spoken to my team, but it's not thought through. So when you say prioritizing, there's a lot into it. It's just not, prioritizing my day. No, it's a bigger picture. That's why I said even in life, when you look at it, it's a bigger picture, because if you don't link one to another, then probably you would lose the purpose of what you're doing. Even for a young executive who is, looking at how do I look at my career, you need to look at where do I want to be? What do I want to achieve? What sort of job would keep me happy? So when you know what sort of job would keep you happy, you will work towards it in terms of, doing my job better at my best, doing my education at this time. So then you have a kind of, probably a plan. Something that probably relating to this in terms of what the question you ask is, all you prioritize, what are the challenges that you face? So in terms of prioritizing, I would want to say in terms of planning, how would you do? Because I'm looking at the bigger picture to the audience to help them plan. Then it'll, breaking your day-to-day activities become much important, and you're doing it with a purpose. So every year, this is a little tip that probably I can share. Every year, if you can plan out what do you want to achieve in terms of my professional life, what do I want to do? What do I want to give to the company? Looking at my profession, and what does the company want out of me? And the second thing is, what is it that I want to have for my family? What do I need to give for my family? Right? What is my family priority this year? You could be having your kids doing your exams to, what is my priority there? Number 3, what am I going to achieve? What is my personal time? What do I want? What will keep me happy? So I think if you plan with that bigger picture, even for young executives, you will do a job that you would love to do. You will do what you're doing with a purpose. It will then help you to break down what you're doing on a daily basis, because you're connecting to the bigger picture. So your little chunks gets into it. So it becomes much more healthier and healthier in terms of, planning for your future, and also planning your day. It's with a purpose. You know why you're doing these things. Yeah. So challenges, yes, as and when we come, we have to face it. And sometimes when we plan ourselves, like I said, we need to be able to draw up from the other resources. Be it at a home front, you need help. Be it from your maid, be it from your parents, your siblings, from your spouse, you need help. So you need to know where to grab those resources from. And also sometimes why we face challenges is because you prioritize what you want to do, but how you do it, how you get things done, what you say, and how you say it matters, right? When you have to get things done, there is an art and a way that you need to get things done. If you cheese off your team, right, you need to get something done, you had not planned it enough, you need to get it done today. You cheese off your team, you're not going to get what you want. So how you say, what you say will help you to get things done. Because when we do not practice those little things, then your probably day goes a little bit berserk. So then it's not an issue of you planning and prioritizing. It's your actions execution. Execution, how you did it, had helped you not achieve it. So then it becomes a challenge. Yeah. So those are little things probably we need to when you say prioritizing, planning, there's a bigger thing behind it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually a very interesting point. Art of getting it done. Yes, Sasanka.
No, I was saying, I think Davina covered that section really well, because very often you can be doing something but not focused on the outcome of what you want to achieve. So important to think about what is the outcome that you're expecting, right? And also on getting stuff done. When she was talking about as a leader how you should behave, something came to my mind which I think is worth sharing. It's that if you're on the receiving end of that, right, then that becomes a real challenge and a real problem, right? So you might have a planned day, then you go to work in the morning and someone might call up and suddenly you have to drop everything and attend to what one of the leaders wants you to do. right?
Sure.
So I think, when you talk about challenges of sticking to your routine in your day, the two other factors are one, being careful about whatever's being asked of you, especially by senior members. The second part I would say is about incentives, right? So, one of the biggest problems with sticking to the schedule is that throughout the day, you have these small incentives that somehow you get suckered into doing, right? Even if it's Facebook, it's something like that, right? You get a small satisfaction out of looking at it, right? So there are these small incentives that you can get immediately, unlike the task that you're trying to do, which sometimes might pay off in a month or 6 months or even a year, right? So when you're talking about challenges, I think two other factors are, leadership behavior and also managing your incentives very well, right? And not getting lured into doing things because of an immediate benefit, but to think through very carefully, why am I doing this for the long term, and sticking to that objective.
Yeah, very interesting point that Sasanka brought out now on when you're on the receiving end. We do have a question also in line with it, so I thought it's best that I post it at this moment. So the question is, I never get to go home on time. My boss always comes late to office and schedules meetings at 5 that go on forever. We are required to report to work at 8 too. How do I prioritize my exercise and family? I have no work-life balance.
Yeah, I think Davina is. I think Davina is probably best placed, being HR.
Okay.
I can just add this to say that I've thought about this a lot, and I don't think there is an easy solution to it, right? I mean, it will be very difficult for her, or it may be very difficult to change an entire organizational culture and change her boss. But the important thing is that if it is really bothering you and you can't get what you really want done, then there's no other option but to quit, right? So, you can try discussing it and try saying that this is eating into your personal life or your longer term. Some people are lucky in the sense that for some people that is okay, right? Because there is alignment between what they want to do and what type of work they're doing and what type of office they're in. So for that type of person, it doesn't matter, right? Like we discussed before, the boss comes late, but you enjoy your work, so you are part and parcel of that culture. You might work weekends, but you love your job, so you don't feel that it's eating into stuff. So again, it's a matter of personal choice and where you're prioritizing on self, family, and work. For some people, that's fine. But for others, if you can't tolerate it, then I think Davina can give you some advice, but I'd say have a discussion. But if it's really bad and if you feel every morning you have to wake up and you're wasting your days and weeks and months, I think that's a really bad use of a person's time, right? And you need to get out of a situation like that as fast as you can, especially if you're young, because it's an absolute waste to, spend your time on something that you don't believe in.
Okay. Probably. Yeah. So I'm just going on a different perspective, Sasanka. I would advise in terms of, I'm not quite sure whether this question, whether the meetings are required in the evening for some reason for business purposes, because if you're working for a multinational, probably the timings might be the reason. So I'm not quite sure what the context is, but your usual routine is 8:35 or whatever time, and this is one particular HOD or one particular senior person is having meetings as a habit all the time after office hours. I think it's good for you. I would advise you to have a very heart-to-heart chat with your boss and to say, if there are areas that you kind of, faced in your personal front, maybe you probably have a class, or, you need to attend to, your, ill parents, or, something like that. Probably that is probably bothering you because, you have planned yourself in terms of your work, in terms of your home, and that's hindering you. right? So you're not happy at work because your boss starts the meeting at 5 o'clock. So I think you need to have that heart-to-heart chat and probably ask boss, how can I help you to do how can I help you to do things in a different way? So you need to be very careful how you pick and choose, because you don't want him to get a little bit irritated, or she's a junior and coming and asking me. So I think you need to tell what's bothering you in terms of that you have done your work and you're unable to attend to certain personal things because the meeting starts in the evening. So I would advise you to have that very heart-to-heart conversation and ask boss, is there anything that I can do to help you, right? So then it will help him start thinking, right? So that is a way that you can look at influencing differently, because you probably would love what you're doing, and you might come into a stage to quit because of your boss is starting the meeting at 5 o'clock. Please ever don't do that. Anyone, I would advise, if you're happy in your job, but you're trying to move because of one person's behavior, please do have a very heart-to-heart discussion, because you've done your best in terms of trying to address it. Yeah.
Yes. So that was in light of the timing. We also have another question. I think probably Davina could take a lead on answering that too. How do I manage when they overload me with work? That's not a part of my main job. So here we are talking about priorities, and if the person is overloaded with work, which is not the main part of the job, how does somebody manage that?
Okay, so I would look at it in two ways. One is, why person probably I'm going to use a singular word now. That is, sometimes someone would get overloaded because you're good, right? In any organization, the person who gets overloaded is the best resource, right? Because your bosses know that once a task is given to you, that will get done, right? So identify whether you're one of those talents, right? And if you're one of those talents, and if you're being earmarked in terms of identified, go that extra mile to do it. I would advise you to go that extra mile to do it, but find ways and means. How can I do it better? Because whoever who was doing the job, that previous job, what I'm understanding is, apart from your job, there is some other task given to you. So find ways and means, without saying no to it, find ways and means to see how can I do that better? How can I improve? And to see whether you can still balance, because these are sometimes ways and means. Organizations also test resources in terms of, to move the resources across. So maybe this is an opportunity for you, but if you feel it's not an opportunity for me, so I'm just talking both perspectives here. So whichever the context that you ask in, it will probably help you. But if it is not in line with that, it's, I'm being, just overloaded. Maybe they want to get rid of me, or, I don't know the context. But if you come into that point, if you have done those checking and adjustments, again, I would tell you to list down all what you do. So you need to be able to show that you're doing extremely more than 8 hours of work, and you have tried to adjust the way that you work, and still it's overloading and it's impacting you. So then you need to go back to your boss, have that heart-to-heart discussion and say, these are things that, maybe the other reason is you're being given another task, because sometimes organizations go through changes, right? And work gets reallocated. So look at whether there is a skill I need to develop to overcome this, right? So there are two sides into it, because organizations also go through changes and they want you to upskill. So is there something that I can do? Because most often what we say is, why is it done to me? Can't they give it to somebody else? Why is the organization doing it? But sometimes in life, at work, we don't think, what is it that difference that I can make? So if there is a difference you can make in adjusting and improving it and doing it better, probably you would be rewarded, right? But in the context, I'm not quite sure the context you are in, but what I'm trying to say is, first see, what can I do it? Don't reject. We naturally, every change we reject. We don't like change. If I'm being asked to get up and sit on the other side of the chair, I wouldn't like to do it, right? But if I sit and think, take a little time always to reflect, why was it been given to me versus the other person? Is it because I can do it better? Capitalize on it. Yeah. So look at both sides of it before you probably make the judgment. That's my piece of advice to you.
Sasanka, do you have anything to add on? Or are you in agreement with Davina?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with Davina, and I think if there's anything I'd add, I'd just say that a lot of the time, if you feel overburdened and overworked, right, you have to think through very carefully, because those may be symptoms also of not having alignment between your purpose and what you're doing, right? The second thing is that it may be a skill gap. Right, so I think Davina touched on that roughly as well. So if you feel overworked and where you can't complete your tasks and you have more, it's probably down to one of those two. Either you don't really like that kind of work and like that, doing things like that, or you don't know how, so you take a lot longer to do it than is expected, something like that. So I think you think carefully along those lines, and then, as Davina said, list everything out and have a chat.
Yes, so I've got another question that's again about I often take my office work home. How do I prioritize my work over my family? I remember Davina was talking about prioritizing the work and then office. So do you want to add on anything?
Yes. Okay.
Is it healthy to take off office work home?
Okay. The simplest answer is no. You need to be able to switch off at whatever time and then, get on to your family life. But in practical sense, it doesn't happen, right? So I would reckon in terms of, when you plan, when you prioritize your day, like I said, certain things we can't do it by ourselves, right? So when you're planning and prioritizing your day, think through how we are going to get it done, right? What is your end objective and how you are going to get it done? So are there anyone who can help you in this process? So identify those resources, because sometimes you can't do everything by yourself.
True.
Right? Even at an executive level, maybe you need that help. Let's say for an executive, you need to give some report. You have to do some analysis or something, but you're stuck with some Excel formula. That will take your entire day to sort things out. And at the end of the day, you are stressed, you are not being able to do. Ask for help. Always be humble enough to ask for help, right? If you don't know something, go ask. That will help you to get things done. So that is one way of, helping things out. And even on your home front, when you're planning your home front, also you need to seek that support that you can get. Because none of us can achieve anything by ourselves, be it at home, be it at work. So it's very, very important for me to find out those little ways of seeking help and preparing. Now, even if you're at work, you're planning your day, look at the outcome and see how am I going to achieve, right? And there might be days you might have to work late. All of us go through it, right? We can't knock off at 6 o'clock sometimes and go. When we go home, we are on a call. But try to look at ways and means in terms of, checking and adjusting your day. Use technology, use a different method. Do I have to wait in office to reply to that mail? No, I can do it. I can still knock off and go. I can do it via the phone, right? So look at certain things because, it depends on the companies which are going, now, especially during this, Corona period. I'm sure all of us were working 24/7, right?
Sure.
Our job demanded to work. So can I switch off? The answer was no. So, but I had to then balance my home front to meet the organizational objectives, because my priority was giving priority to my organization at that point. Again, look at identifying what my priorities are. So I'll just probably help you with a little exercise. So list down the things that you do on a routine basis, on a day-to-day. From the time you get up, you brush your teeth, write down the things that you do, right? And look at the areas that I can do it by myself, or are there things that I can bridge this gap? Are there things that I can look at new learning bringing in? Are there areas that I can look at delegating, right? So when you go through your time list, so put your task a day from the time you get up. So your personal front till you go to sleep. Look at from the time I get up, I wash, I have my breakfast, I drop my kids to school, I then get into work, then I go out for lunch, or evening I go to the gym, or, in the night I come home, I take a wash, again I go to sleep. In that routine, what are the things that I can outsource? I would use the word outsource. What are the things that I can check and adjust? What are the things that I need to start improving on, right? So there are, we can't go and change the rest of the world. There are little things that we can do to make a huge difference in ourselves, right? So come work, and probably if you're still struggling after doing, be conscious of what, take a little time. I'm sharing this because I've done it. Because about a year ago, I was finding it difficult to find a little bit of exercise for myself. Then I thought, what? Because I was going off office, basically 6:30, 7 and all of that. Then I started doing this exercise, and I found an hour to do my exercises. I found an hour to go to the gym. So it's not easy when we are, we're all in this rat race. So you need to find that time to check and adjust. Now, as I speak, now I said in the morning what my plan was, everything went berserk, right? But I need to be mindful. No, I need to switch off. I need to now do this, right? If you don't do those mental adjustments and adjust yourself, you go through a lot of stress inside. And then that starts building into your family, that starts building into your work. And then you can't, again, start prioritizing your work. The same thing keeps happening. So there are things you need to be conscious of. What is it that I need to do to adjust? So the person who asked this question, I would probably humbly ask you to list down your routine from the time you get up till you go to sleep, and put the number of hours you spend on those, minutes and hours, and see what are the checking and adjustment I can do. And focus on the things that you like to do, that you love to do. When you don't get that congruence of what you love to do, then is where the issue of, although I prioritize, I can't get it done, because you're doing certain things that you're not happy with. So then you don't achieve anything. The organization don't achieve, your family is unhappy, you're unhappy inside. So try to use these little tools to check and adjust. Yeah, every time we, something goes wrong, check and adjust. No, I need to be mindful. Something is not right. What is it that I can do? Always think, firstly, what is it that I can do? Then it becomes much easier. Yeah.
I think that's a perfect way to bring our conversation to a closing as well. But though we're running out of time, we just have one question. I thought it would be interesting to something that Davina was mentioning yesterday. So I'll quickly ask the question. Maybe we can have a conclusion with that. So it says, I'm a working wife, newly married. How can I manage my time at home? Any tips? As I'm a career-oriented person and do not want to give up. I think Davina was talking about these priorities in different stages of life. So maybe you could just say it so we can have a nice ending to the conversation.
Okay, so I think from the person who asked, she said, I'm a career-minded person, I'm just married. So she's focused on her career. So I think you need to have, firstly, a very heart-to-heart discussion with your spouse in terms of seeking that help. So when we have a journey to go, we need to ask for help, right? So have that heart-to-heart conversation with your spouse in terms of, make him understand. I'm sure, if you're a career woman, there will be meetings you need to go into, your cocktails, to your dinners after work and things like that. So, planning things for the following day gets a little bit not too easy, right? So you need to have that deeper understanding with your spouse and maybe with your other close family members in helping you in certain things. So I'll probably share a little bit about just to help you out. So, when I have now today, when I had to come into the webinar, I said in the morning, now usually the routine is I do the groceries. So today I had to share it with my husband, right? So we have a very good understanding in terms of helping each other in terms of what our priorities are, because he would know what my work priorities, what my home priorities, what my priorities are. So I think it's very important to have that conversation, because this is about, because you're career minded, you want to move up in the ladder. So you would want to do things more for the company. You would want to impress your bosses or, to get into that career ladder. So there's a lot of background you need to prepare in your home, and plan your day. That becomes very, very important. Plan your day, and also make use of time in between to spend with your family. For an example, if, make the time to, maybe get your spouse to drop you, to pick you. So still you don't use that quality time with your family, you're still connected. Even if you have 2 vehicles, try to use 1 vehicle for that picking, dropping moment. So you don't use that quality time still, whilst you're trying to achieve your end career objective. And in your career also, it depends on you. Being a female in different stages of life, which you want is different. But hence you said you want to be that career woman. I think firstly, because you're newly married, you need to have that conversation with your spouse, because if you don't have that support of your spouse, your bigger purpose, it's going to be a little bit challenging in terms of achieving. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Davina. I think it will, even not just for females, I think even for guys, they could probably apply the idea behind what you said in terms of identifying their priorities in these different stages of life. So, Sasanka, one last tip let's share to follow, that you follow to prioritize and make the most out of your day, since Davina, I think, covered most of the areas. So let's hear from you last.
Sure. So I think there are some interesting questions that have come up, and I was thinking about this. There may not be easy answers to all of these questions, right? These are really tough questions, and there are stuff that I think it's good for these individuals to also reflect very deeply on the questions that they've asked, because sometimes the answers might be within themselves. So I think the summary is that throughout our lives there are going to be constant demands for our time and our attention. And we need to be really clever and really reflective about how those demands get met, right? And I think the takeaway from the conversation question that a lot of people are having is that it's very easy to get misled by someone who's screaming out very loud and demanding things, or to spend your time and effort on something that offers an immediate fast reward but doesn't give you wealth and happiness in the longer term, right? So I think the key takeaway is to how would you spend your life so that you get the most out of the time that you put into something and the effort that you put into something. And that's a question that you need to ask yourself and reflect deeply on.
Thank you, Sasanka. Unfortunately, that brings our conversation to an end. We've covered some interesting insights today on how to prioritize, planning your day, art of getting things done, and making the most out of your day. I'm sure the audience would have had a lot of practical tips to take home. Thank you, Sasanka and Davina, for being with us today. It was a pleasure to have a conversation with both of you. Anton, over to you.
Thank you, Zafrana. Once again, thank you, Sasanka. Thank you, Davina, for that wonderful knowledge share that kept us in definite rapt attention. The takeaway for us, I guess, is while amateurs sit and wait for inspiration, the rest of us just get up and get to work. As we heard today, managing time without setting priorities is almost like shooting randomly and calling whatever you hit a target. So we prioritize. The key, however, is not just to prioritize what's on a schedule, but to schedule priorities. No one on a deathbed ever said, I wish I had more time at the office. So let's prioritize wisely. Dreaming is also a form of planning for the future, but do be mindful of this. Most people overestimate what they can do in a month and underestimate what they can do in an hour. So make each day a masterpiece. So thank you, Sasanka and Davina, for that wonderful knowledge share. On that note, I'd like to thank H1, our partners, our technology partners who've been powering this series right along. Next week, join us again for the Revive and Grow segment, where we will be discussing building a personal brand Watch our social media space for more details. Coming up in the next is This, That and the Other with Varun. And click in and stay glued, where we'll be discussing the good, the bad and the ugly of yet another thought-provoking topic, cracking the innovation code. Stay tuned. Enjoy the rest of the day. Stay safe. Stay productive. Thank you.
Thank you.